Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tearing into a stack of research, looking at how major organizations make these really big decisions, specifically how they choose and manage the partners who actually build their products.
Yeah, and it's not just admin, is it? We're talking core strategy here.
Absolutely. This isn't about pushing paper. It's fundamental.
That's right. So for you, the listener, the mission today is really to get why modern procurement has become such a competitive field.
A battleground, almost.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Our sources show that, whether a big company succeeds or fails often comes down to how good its suppliers are. The upstream guys.
So we're mapping that whole journey today.
Exactly. From like the first screening, how you pick them, all the way through maybe developing ones that aren't quite cutting it, and then integrating the best ones right into innovation, new product development.
And this whole area has just exploded recently, hasn't it? It seems way more critical than it used to be.
Oh, definitely. Massive global shifts are driving it. We used to think much more locally. But now global sourcing means the sheer number of suppliers and where they are, it's increased dramatically. It's a really complex web out there.
A huge ecosystem.
It is. And then you add trends like, well, mass outsourcing, plus this push to actually reduce the number of suppliers you manage.
Supply-based reduction, yeah.
Right. That means the companies downstream, the ones selling the final product, they are incredibly dependent now on the specific skills and knowledge their suppliers have.
That dependency, well, it forces a pretty big strategic shift, I
It
imagine.
has to. The old way, just deciding based on price.
Yeah.
That's pretty much gone.
Because you might save a bit up front.
Exactly. Save pennies, but then risk, huge failures down the line. It's just not sustainable.
So the focus now is what? Total cost relationships.
Precisely. It's shifted irrevocably to thinking about total cost and really prioritizing long-term relationships, partnerships, that deep management potential.
You need partners you can rely on for quality, for stability, not just whoever puts in the lowest number.
Absolutely. And that's where we need to start understanding just how rigorous that selection process really needs to be.
Okay, let's unpack that. How do you actually select the partner? You mentioned the difficulty varies.
Right. It almost entirely depends on the buying situation itself. The research points to three basic scenarios, and they really define how much effort, time and money you put into checking out a new source.
It makes sense. What's the first one?
The easiest is the straight rebuy. It's routine. You know this stuff inside out.
Like ordering more paperclip?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
You bought this exact thing 100 times. Specifications are known. You probably have contracts already. You just place another order. Very little uncertainty, very little effort.
Okay, straightforward. What's next?
Then there's the middle ground, the modified rebuy. This brings in a moderate amount of uncertainty.
How so?
Well, think of it like this. Maybe you're buying a product you know well, but you're trying a new supplier this time. Or the other way around. You're buying a new product, but from a supplier you already know and trust.
Ah, okay, so only part of the equation is uncertain.
Exactly. So you put in, a moderate amount of effort to check things out, due diligence, but not a full-blown investigation.
Got it. Which leaves the big one.
The new buy. This is where procurement teams often earn their keep. It could be quite stressful.
Because it's totally new territory.
Completely. An entirely new product, maybe a new service. You've got zero history, no known suppliers who specialize in this yet. And often, you're not even 100% sure about the final technical specs yourself.
Wow, okay. High uncertainty.
Very high. And that scenario demands the most rigorous, structured selection approach.
But it's not just the type of buy, is it? Doesn't the company's own way of doing things matter too? Their culture?
Oh, absolutely. The firm's internal sourcing preferences play a huge role. Is the company culture geared towards using its leverage with a single supplier?
Or are they more risk-averse, always wanting multiple suppliers for backup?
Exactly. And do they prefer short-term contracts to stay flexible, or are they looking for those long-term commitments, deep collaboration?
Domestic versus foreign sourcing, arm's-length deals versus partnerships.
All those preferences shape the process. They dictate the resources you're willing to commit. And if it is one of those high-stakes new buy situations, well, that's when you really need that structured four-step approach.
Okay, let's walk through those 4 steps. Step 1.
Initial supplier qualification. Basically the first cut. You have to narrow the field somehow.
Because you can't possibly audit everyone on the planet.
Right. Resources are always limited. So you look for signals, indicators of capability, and crucially, stability.
Like what kind of signals? Certifications?
Yeah, things like ISO 9000 for quality management, maybe ISO 14000 for environmental standards. But also, do they use sophisticated techniques?
Techniques like,
Well, are they using statistical process control, SPC? Using real-time data to keep their production quality consistent. Or maybe vendor-managed inventory, VMI, where they actually take responsibility for managing stock levels at your facility.
okay, so signs they're professionally managed.
Precisely. And critically, you have to look at their financial viability. It sounds basic, but you need partners who aren't going to go bankrupt next month.
So you check financial reports.
Definitely. You often rely heavily on third-party reports here. Things like the Dun& Bradstreet Supplier Qualifier Report. It helps assess that basic financial risk before you sink a lot of time into deeper audits.
Makes sense. So you've made the first cut. What's step 2?
Step 2 is really crucial. Agree measurement criteria. Before you even think about asking for prices or proposals, your team needs to sit down and define exactly what factors matter most for this specific product.
So what's strategically important to us?
Exactly. If it's, say, a highly innovative component, maybe design capability gets weighted really heavily. If it's more of a commodity part, perhaps stability of supply and cost are the dominant factors. You have to decide that up front.
Okay, criteria set. Then step 3 must be getting the info.
Right. Obtain relevant information. This is the deep data gathering phase. For simple items, maybe it's just sending out basic requests for quotes, RFQs.
Just give us a price.
Pretty much. But for complex systems, you'll issue detailed requests for proposals, RFPs. These demand exhaustive info cost breakdowns, operational plans, quality procedures.
And this is where you do site visits too, kick the tires.
Absolutely. Site visits, financial audits if needed, checking references, maybe using preferred supplier lists if you have them.
Okay, gathering all the evidence. Which brings us to step 4, making the final call.
The final selection, yes. And since we already established that just picking the cheapest is usually a bad idea,
Right.
complex decisions really require using proper multi-criteria decision-making models, MCDM models. This is where you move beyond gut feeling and apply some, weighted science.
Okay, so structured decision-making. What kind of models are we talking about?
The two big ones that really define strategic sourcing are total cost of ownership, TCO, and the Analytic Hierarchy Process, AHP.
TCO. That sounds like getting beyond just the purchase price.
It's all about seeing the hidden costs. That part might only cost you $1 up front. Right. But if that supplier has a shaky quality system...
You could spend way more later fixing problems.
Exactly. You might spend an extra, say, 25 cents on inspecting their deliveries, another 10 cents on reworking faulty parts, maybe 15 cents managing the resulting scrap. TCO captures all of that.
So it includes things like warranty costs, training, even disposal.
Everything. Warranty repairs, training your staff on the new component, sometimes even the cost of disposing of obsolete inventory if their deliveries are erratic. It gives you the true lifetime cost of that partnership. Ignoring TCO is just asking for trouble.
Okay, that's powerful. What about the other one, AHP, Analytic Hierarchy Process?
AHP is designed for those really tricky trade-offs where criteria conflict.
Like cheaper price versus lower quality?
Perfect example. You might have supplier A who's 15% cheaper, but their quality rating is just average. Supplier B costs more, but their quality is stellar. How do you decide?
That's the classic dilemma.
Right. AHP provides a formal framework to quantify those trade-offs. You strategically weight the factors. Maybe quality gets a 50% weight, price gets 30%, delivery reliability 20%, whatever's important.
And the model helps calculate the best overall score based on those weights.
Precisely. It helps you determine objectively if that 15% discount is actually worth the hit you take on quality based on your strategic priorities. It moves the decision from endless debate to a quantified comparison.
So AHP formalizes those tough calls. Okay, so we've used these sophisticated models, TCO, AHP. We've picked our perfect partner, but 6 months later, this critical supplier, maybe they're just not hitting the mark consistently.
Yeah, that happens. Despite the best vetting, maybe their quality starts slipping or they can't keep up with the quantity you need or the specs drift. You hit a strategic crossroads.
What are the options then?
Well, the research usually points to 3 basic alternatives when a key supplier starts to underperform. First, you could try to make rather than buy.
Bring it back in-house.
Yep, insource it. Take back control. Second option, maybe simpler, is just switch suppliers. Resource the item, find someone else who can meet the need.
Okay, insource or resource. What's the third way?
The third, and often the most strategically interesting option, is to engage in supplier development.
Actively trying to fix the supplier.
It's essentially, yes. But it's more than just fixing. It's a long-term commitment to improve them.
How is it defined formally?
Supplier development is basically any effort by the buying firm, the customer, to improve the supplier's performance and/or their underlying capabilities. The goal is to ensure your supply needs, short and long term, are met.
And this isn't some new academic idea, right? Where did it come from?
Its modern roots are really in the lean manufacturing philosophy, particularly from Japanese car companies like Toyota.
Ah, Toyota. They're famous for their supplier relationships.
Absolutely. They didn't see suppliers as adversaries you squeeze for price.
Yeah.
They saw them as extensions of their own production systems.
So they worked with them.
Constantly. They pursued Kaizen, continuous improvement, with their suppliers. A big focus was rooting out muda.
Muda, that's the Japanese term for waste, right?
Exactly. Non-value-adding activities. Anything that doesn't help create the product the customer wants.
Can you give an example? What does muda look like in a supplier context?
Oh, it could be anything. Unnecessary waiting time for trucks at a loading dock. Extra, pointless steps in an internal approval process at the supplier. Complex rework loops because the initial instructions weren't clear.
Got it. Wasted effort, wasted time, wasted material.
Right. And Toyota realized that if their suppliers could cut out that waste, the benefits, lower costs, better quality, faster delivery, would flow directly back to Toyota. It was enlightened self-interest.
So how intense does this development get? Is it always a huge effort?
No, it varies wildly. At the lower end, you have what's called limited development. Maybe it's just an informal chat about performance or asking them to meet a new quality standard. Fairly light touch.
Okay. And the other end of the scale?
That's extensive development. This requires serious commitment, real resource sharing.
Like what? Sending people over?
Yeah, maybe the customer sends their own specialist engineers to work inside the supplier's factory for a few weeks, sharing detailed technical know-how, sometimes even direct financial investment, helping the supplier buy better machinery or tooling.
Wow, okay. That's a deep partnership.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's important to distinguish the objectives, too. Some development work is just about direct involvement.
Fixing an immediate problem.
Right. A short-term fix. Like, let me show you how to adjust this specific machine so it stops making that defect next week. Problem solved for now.
But there's a deeper level.
Yes, and that's where the real long-term strategic advantage lies. Supplier capability development. This is different.
How so?
Here, you shift focus from fixing the symptom to fixing the system. You're not just solving today's problem, you're teaching the supplier how to solve problems themselves, helping them build the internal knowledge, the processes, the culture for continuous change.
Ah, so teaching them to fish rather than giving them a fish.
Exactly. The buying firm gets much bigger, more sustainable improvements over time because the supplier develops the internal capability for improvement. They don't need constant handholding anymore.
That makes a lot of sense strategically. Is there a process for doing this capability development?
There is. Researchers like Krauss outlined a pretty logical approach. It often starts with Pareto analysis.
The 80-20 rule.
Yep.
Ah.
Identify the critical 20% of products or components and the suppliers for those items who are maybe performing just barely acceptably. They're not terrible, but they could be much better. Those are often the best candidates for development investment.
Focus your resources where they'll have the biggest impact.
Right. Then you formalize things. Form a cross-functional team, people from engineering, quality, procurement from both companies. Meet with the supplier's senior management to get buy-in. Define very specific improvement projects with clear goals and metrics.
And monitor progress.
Absolutely. Monitor the agreement, track the results. It shifts it from just complaining about performance to a structured, collaborative program for getting better together.
That focus on collaboration, on partnership, it seems like a natural lead-in to the next level.
Actually involving suppliers in innovation, right?
Exactly. Once you have that trust, that capability, the next frontier is often supplier involvement in new product development, or SINPD.
SINPD, okay. What does that involve?
It's where suppliers aren't just making parts to your spec anymore. They're contributing their own resources, their knowledge, their capabilities. Sometimes they even take primary responsibility for designing and developing an entire component or subsystem.
So it's way beyond just outsourcing manufacturing. You're outsourcing some of the brain power.
Precisely. And the research is clear. Good design, rapid innovation today, it's heavily linked to how well and, crucially, how early a company integrates its key suppliers. This idea of early supplier involvement, or ESI.
ESI. Getting them in at the beginning. Why is that so important?
Well, look at the Toyota example again. For a typical car, their suppliers account for something like 70% of the manufacturing costs.
70%. Yeah. And maybe even more staggering, around 50% of the actual engineering costs. Half the design work.
Wow.
So if Toyota suppliers aren't innovating, Toyota simply can't stay competitive. ESI is designed to tap into that external expertise early on to shorten development times, lower overall costs, and boost quality and reliability.
And the data backs that up. Those are the main goals.
They are. When researchers ask companies why they pursue SIMPD, the top answers are almost always
Right.
reduce design and development time, cut the final cost of the purchased item, and improve the quality and reliability of the end product, efficiency, and quality.
Okay. How do we think about the different levels of involvement? Is it all or nothing?
No, definitely not. There's a spectrum. A common way to visualize it is using the box analogy: white, gray, and black box.
Okay, let's start with white box. What's that?
White box is the lowest level of supplier involvement in design. Basically, the supplier just makes to print.
Meaning the customer does all the design work.
Exactly. The customer hands over fully detailed, finalized technical drawings and specifications. The supplier's job is just to execute that design precisely. This usually means late involvement in the process, and it's typically used for simpler, less critical components where the buyer wants to retain full design control.
Okay, make to print. What's gray box?
Gray box is the middle ground. It implies shared responsibility, shared risk, shared expertise.
Co-development.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The design specifications are developed jointly by the customer and the supplier. There's collaborative problem solving. Maybe the customer defines the key functions and they work together on the detailed design. The ownership is shared.
Right, which leads to the highest level.
The black box. This represents the deepest level of supplier integration into design.
What happens here?
Here, the design work is primarily supplier-driven. The customer provides high-level functional specifications, basically saying, here's what we need this system or component to do.
But not how to do it.
Right. The supplier then takes the lead on the detailed engineering, the material selection, the testing, creating the final blueprint. They own the design based on the customer's functional needs.
That sounds like a huge amount of trust.
It is. And it requires very early involvement. ESI is essential for black box to work. It's typically used for complex, critical systems where the supplier has unique expertise or technology, often with strategic alliance partners.
You mentioned ESI, early supplier involvement, being crucial. Why does that timing matter so much?
It comes down to the classic cost and flexibility curve in product development. Think about it, right at the very beginning, when a product is just a concept.
You can change anything easily.
Exactly. Your design flexibility is at its maximum, and the cost of making a change, tweaking an idea, exploring a different approach is practically zero.
But later on.
By the time you're nearing production, maybe in pilot testing, your flexibility is way down. Making even a small design change then can be incredibly expensive and time-consuming. It might require major retooling, retesting, supplier changes. The costs skyrocket.
So getting supplier input early when changes are cheap and easy is key.
Absolutely. That black box involvement, which demands ESI, brings huge potential benefits because of that early input. Better manufacturability because the maker is involved in the design, faster speed to market because you shorten the overall cycle time, lower costs often result, and, crucially, you get access to the supplier's specialized technology and knowledge.
Reducing your own internal R&D burden and risk.
Precisely. It can significantly de-risk the R&D process for the buying firm.
Okay, so black box ESI, it sounds like the holy grail. Highest rewards, speed, quality, lower cost, access to tech. Why wouldn't every company just do black box for all their important components? What holds them back?
Because that's the critical strategic trade-off, isn't it? Those huge rewards come packaged with some pretty significant risks.
Okay, what are the main downsides?
The first big one is a potential loss of bargaining power. When you deeply integrate a supplier's unique technology or design into your product.
It gets harder to switch away from them later.
Much harder. You become dependent. They know it, and your leverage in future negotiations can decrease.
Okay, dependency risk. What else?
The second major headache is managing intellectual property. The risk of leakage of key information to competitors.
If they're that deep inside your design process?
Yeah, the chances of sensitive confidential data about your future products potentially finding its way to rivals, maybe through that supplier working with others. Well, that risk definitely goes up.
That's a big one. Any others?
Yes, and perhaps the most dangerous one in the long term, the lock-in effect.
Technological lock-in, what's that mean?
Because you've integrated so deeply with one supplier's specific technology, their specific way of doing things. What happens if that supplier fails to keep innovating? Or what if a totally disruptive new technology emerges from somewhere else entirely?
You might be stuck on an outdated path.
Exactly. You could find yourself technologically locked into an obsolete trajectory with that supplier. Cutting ties becomes incredibly difficult and expensive, especially after investing potentially millions in joint development and tooling.
So you sacrifice future flexibility for current benefits.
That's the inherent risk. And there's one more practical point. That deep collaboration, black box style, just creates more bureaucracy.
More meetings, more coordination.
You got it. Managing that intense coordination between two legally separate companies takes significant time, effort, and high-level management attention. If you don't manage it really smartly, the coordination costs and the time delays can actually eat away at the speed-to-market gains you were hoping for in the first place.
Too many cooks, potentially.
It can feel like that if it's not managed well. So yeah, intelligence is required. It's not just whether you do ESI or black box, it's how you manage the process, especially those risks.
Wow. Okay, what a journey. So just to recap this deep dive, we started by framing supplier management not as admin, but as a real core strategic capability.
Right, using sophisticated tools like TCO and AHP in selection to get way beyond just looking at the purchase price.
Then we saw how the smart companies don't just ditch underperformers, they often invest in supplier development.
Yeah, actively strengthening partners, moving from just fixing immediate problems towards long-term capability building, really embracing that Kaizen philosophy of continuous improvement, rooting out waste or muda.
And finally, we got to the pinnacle, integrating the best partners right into the innovation process through SINPD and ESI.
Using those white, gray, and especially the high-reward, high-risk black box approaches to accelerate development and tap into external tech.
Knowing, though, that the biggest danger lurking there is that technological lock-in.
Absolutely. It drives home that effective supply chain management today is, without a doubt, a major source of competitive advantage. But achieving it demands constant critical thinking. You're always balancing those risks, information leaks, dependency, lock-in, against the potential rewards of speed, innovation, and cost savings.
That technological lock-in risk with the black box approach seems particularly tricky, especially given it offers the biggest potential upsides. So, here's something for you, the listener, to mull over. How might a company structure its contracts, maybe its IP agreements, during a black box project where the supplier is doing the core design work specifically to mitigate that danger of getting locked into one technological path? How can they build in flexibility for the future?
That's the multi-million-dollar question smart companies are grappling with right now. Finding that balance is key.